The Conjuring movies have terrified people for over a decade, but the big question is, will this fourth part still be able to get the scares that it once did? And this felt like a great return to form, unlike The Nun 2, in which did the opposite. How much of this is actually real? That's the question that we all want to know. The Conjuring movies have terrified people for over a decade, but the big question is, will this fourth part still be able to get the scares that it once did? Some fans are calling it a return to form, but others are calling this to be just another sequel. Where does this movie land? Well, let's dive in and find out. So, Conjuring Last Rites felt like a great return and felt like a great bounce back from 2 or 3 big lackluster movies in the Conjuring universe, and this felt like a great return to form, unlike The Nun 2, in which did the opposite. The story follows Ed and Lorraine Warren on their final adventure of ghost hunting, and it puts a nice storybook ending for the pair in this fictional world, because we all know that what's coming up later on, when we talk about what's real and what isn't, a lot of it is fake. But we'll get onto that later on. But with the actual story itself, it's entertaining. It does what it needs to do for the Conjuring universe from Warner Brothers. And for me, I think Ed and Lorraine Warren's final adventure of going all the way back to when they started, having this story unfold for over several decades to the point where they can actually solve it. So going back to the beginning, in the 1960s, when they do one of their first cases and come across their real first demon. And in this is a mirror. Lorraine Warren checks out the mirror, and at the time she's pregnant with Judy, and this interaction with the mirror, with this cursed object, causes her to go into labour and then have the baby. But this isn't the end, because she sees a futuristic lifestyle of what's going to happen. So that mirror did something to not only Lorraine but to also Judy that stopped them from ever going back, because this nearly cost Judy's life because she was end up being a stillborn. But this then obviously tainted their demon hunting as opposed, because they never went back, because they felt too close of a connection when their baby nearly lost its life, and did lose its life for a few minutes until obviously Lorraine prayed for that baby's life to come back. However, 22 years later, the mirror comes back to haunt them yet again, as the Smells family are the victims to this, and they end up getting attacked. They cause candles to be blown out, which is nothing major. But the dog to be thrown against the wall, that's pretty major. And a light to fall on and gash one of the family's heads, in which then causes a major issue, because you can't have it just attacking people, and causes one of their kids to start throwing up glass. I mean, a bit extreme, don't you think? So, yes. So then you think, does Ed and Lorraine Warren just come down? No, they don't. They have to wait until Father Gordon dies for them to actually investigate the case. And it's not even them that wanted to investigate the case. It was their daughter, Judy, after feeling the coffin of Father Gordon, wanted to know how he died. And then she puts 2 and 2 together and finds out that it was that house that he last went to. They had obviously been contacted by Father Gordon before that point, but then it's now they've died, so okay, we'll have a look. And Judy just dragged them into one of the worst situations possible. So blame this movie on her, apparently. And to me, this whole story of them going on this final journey, going through this, and it was so bad for them as a family going through that time that they decided to retire. That shows how big of a sort of journey this was for them, and a big adventure that they went on, to the point where we've had enough of this shit, we're getting out of this. And I think that element made this exciting, made this something where it's like, how bad could this adventure be, to the point where they quit. And it was pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. But how much of this is actually real? That's the question that we all want to know. Well, I can tell you now that there's a lot that is real. The Smells did actually go through some of these kind of things. The dog getting thrown against the wall is apparently true. And the kid getting gashed on the head with the falling light is also true. The Warrens actually looking into the case, also true. But there's a few misconceptions here as well, because what the movie presents and what the real life fact is, there's a lot of changing, and in Hollywood we know about those changes. and especially the Conjuring Universe, is very known for changing stuff. So, the things that aren't real is the fact that Judy actually went into the house. That is false. She went nowhere near the house, nor did Tony, soon to be husband, to be fair. And we also see that, for instance, Judy gets possessed. She went even in the house to be possessed. The mirror is also fake. So the whole mirror angle storyline, not real, completely made up. Father Gordon's death, of looking like he's just been hung, which leads them to the house, he doesn't exist. He's a fictional character. So they actually, Ed and Lorraine Warren, went on their own accord after seeing the tele appeal, after they found no luck with the church and whatever, and trying to get them on board. The whole idea of making them look like massive superheroes like they do in every fucking film, yeah, that's fake. That is completely fake. They basically got a priest in to do the exorcism of the house, or the cleaning of the house, and there was still apparently a few issues afterwards, and then they moved on, but then the next people that came in, there was no real issues with the house. Funny enough, that happens with all these apparent hauntings, doesn't it? Coincidence? I don't know. They could have been faking it, they might not have. I don't know. But then you go over the fact that at the wedding, at the end, a big ceremony. How many of those people actually turned up in terms of those families? None of them. I'll go over it. The Perron family mother who's in it, well, she didn't actually have any ties with them at this point, because she'd cut her ties long before 1986 when the so-called marriage took place, and so she isn't in there, so that's just for the story. You've also got the mother from the Enfield haunting who's also there. Or is she? No, she isn't, because she didn't really interact with them. They literally came down for one day uninvited and tried to take over the entire case, and they got kicked out. So were they friends with those? No. So she definitely was not at the wedding. And when you're looking at the whole family of the Smells being there, that is also false. None of those were there. And that might just be a small detail just to go, oh, that happy ever after sort of thing. But when a lot of these things don't quite add up, that makes for an interesting story, don't get me wrong. But also the fact that they're sort of going, oh, we were all friends, but you weren't. That weren't the case that Warner Brothers is trying to present. The ending for me was a little bit over the top. We've gone over what's real and what's not, and obviously this weren't part of what was real. The wedding was actually real between the two. But before then, the whole Tony getting squished by the mirror, the whole live Annabelle stuff happening, there's a load of different stuff that happens in that ending, which literally is just mostly bollocks and hearsay. Literally, there's nothing true about that ending. It's a little bit over the top. The possession of Judy, all this sort of stuff, even though it was really entertaining, but I think it was okay. I think it made sense, even though it was predictable, enjoyable. You knew where the film was going to go all the way through, so you felt the story go through. There's nothing that was really surprising. The only thing that were really shock value is the jump scares. So to summarise the new Conjuring, to me, this is a 7.1 out of 10 and a great film. Do let us know down in the comments down below. Is it one of the better Conjuring films? Is it one of the worst ones? Let us know down in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet seen our Nun 2 movie review, then I think you need to go check that out right now.